Testing 1, 2. Can you hear me? I still can't hear y'all. Robert, you over there breaking stuff? Did did y'all lose? Are y'all using the little microphones? Listen, y'all, the devil is a lie. I'm gonna say it, and the church said amen. But I have no idea what the hell just happened. But Robert was going into explaining why he believes that God is an important tool, an important piece to a healthy relationship. His sound went down. He was working on his sound, and I was going back, kind of discussing what he was talking about, and then all of a sudden the live stream ended. So Satan, if you don't quit playing, you know what? I can't help but to look at Satan like this little hard headed little boy, like always getting into stuff. Boy, if you don't sit down somewhere. But yeah, he's just that little brother that's always getting in the way of stuff, and bless his little heart. But yeah, man, we're talking about relationships and personal growth. Like vulnerability and hope to me kind of is, important components to a healthy personal development and a healthy relationship. And you find that individually, and I think you find that as a couple. You find that that vulnerability individually, and you find that vulnerability within the couple. Then you find that level of hope to keep driving to a purpose, right? And in relationships, the purpose is to experience life together, that in harmony, and in peace. And nothing's ever going to be perfect. You as a couple, you're always going to go through ups and downs, just like you would individually. And so keeping hope alive, I feel like, is essential to every person's personal growth and development, personal life, individually, and as a unit, as a couple. So we're going to dive into it. We've got a framework put together. Robert, he's working on getting his sound back. Like I said, the devil is a lie. He played too much, but he gonna have to listen because we're gonna work through this. In the comments, man, if y'all have any advice on what's worked for you in your personal development and your relationship, please share with us. I think the more angles that we can see personal development and relationships, the better we all are off, solving some of our issues and problems. So I'm going to put in the chat personal development. Y'all going to have to forgive me. I'm a little hooked on phonics. And relationships. What's worked for you? Let's do that. Please share this. Relationships. All right. So I had a Robert. Oh wait, hang on. Let me see. Can you? Okay, can't unmute your guest. The mic isn't connected. Okay. There. All right. Why can't I? Let me see something. All right. I still can't hear. Man, I hope this works out. Let's see. Y'all hang tight. Please, if you've got any feedback on what's worked for you in your personal development, what's worked for you in your relationship, please share. I think getting advice from multiple angles is very helpful. Oh boy. I'm over here trying to share this live onto my personal page. Wait, what? Okay. What's worked for you? What's worked for you in your personal development? What's worked for you in your relationships? And how have you embraced vulnerability? Vulnerability says a lot, man. I think that we're all vulnerable. I think everybody's vulnerable. I think what has happened is we've become numb to our vulnerability, out of embarrassment, out of shame. And sometimes, we've kind of allowed that, what's the word I'm looking for here? That, it'll come to me. I always run into these brain farts, but we get comfortable in where we're at. And sometimes we stop growing. Is it inertia, the word I'm looking for? That inertia. And, we stop looking for ways to improve, how we see the world, our thinking. And that rolls over into our relationships. And so vulnerability says, hey, man, like, I'm human. Hey, I'm not perfect. Yeah, I have these, bumps, bruises, and I say, this a certain kind of way. I say that a certain kind of way, or I think this way, and hadn't yielded me any good results. So yeah, I failed. I can be seen as a failure. My breath might stink. There's something wrong with everybody. And being vulnerable is, to me, allowing that truth to come in, allowing the truth to register. And and so we're going to talk more about that. Robert and Crystal, they did a episode a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago now, and they talked about vulnerability. And they shared it in such an elegant way. They spoke about vulnerability in such a great way to digest. I think I heard some sound, Robert. No. All right. So what I'm going to do, we had a video queued up about vulnerability, but while they're working on that, I think there's another video we can watch while they're working on the sound. And Robert and Crystal, once you guys get that sound up, just let me know, and then I'll come out of this video. But this video is about 3 requirements of a good relationship. Now, we might agree to disagree with what they have to say here, but let's go down this journey together while they fix their microphone, because I really would like for them to come on and talk about how they see vulnerability, hope, and just kind of pick their brain, man, because they speak about some good stuff. Requirements, a good relationship. And, who couldn't use, some advice on, how to improve themselves in the relationship these days? Because, man, the world is chew you up and spit you out. It's the weirdest thing. Let me try to go back in and see if I can hear you from there. And sometimes, we've kind of allowed that. Let me try to go back in and see if I can hear you from there. That's so weird. We were on a roll too. So weird. All right, I'm gonna cue this video up, Robert, and then whenever I hear you talk, I'll go ahead and close that out. And this is 3 requirements to a good relationship. Let's build.
Many people, after they've been in a couple for some time, will privately admit that they are, in many ways, frustrated and disappointed by the person they've chosen to share their lives with. If pressed for details, they will have no difficulty coming up with a list. Their partner, they might complain, is too loyal to their irritating family, or doesn't share their views on the layout of the living room, or never wants to go on camping holidays, or plays tennis every Wednesday evening no matter what, or doesn't like Moroccan food, or doesn't share their enthusiasm for 19th century Russian novels, or has a habit of adding actually to every second sentence when it's actually redundant. as the list gets longer, they sigh. They still love their partner and they long to be happy together. It's just that it seems impossibly complicated to make this relationship work. What's driving the frustration is not that they've sadly fallen for an idiot as a mate. It's rather that we have all inherited needlessly complicated ideas of what a relationship is supposed to be for. We are told that love is meant to involve the almost total merger of two lives. We expect that a loving couple must live in the same house, eat the same meals together every night, share the same bed, go to sleep and get up at the same time, only ever have sex with, or even sexual thoughts about each other, regularly see each other's families, have all their friends in common, and pretty much think the same thoughts on every topic at every moment. It's a beautiful vision, but a hellish one too, because it places an impossibly punitive burden of expectation on another human.
Yeah.
We feel the partner must be right for us in every way, and if they're not, has to be prodded and cajoled into reform. But there is another perspective. Relationships don't have to be so complicated and ambitious if we keep in view what in the end actually makes them fulfilling. If we boil matters down, there might really just be three essential things that we want from a lover. Firstly, kindness. A partner who is gentle with our imperfections and can good-humouredly tolerate us as we are. Secondly, shared vulnerability. Someone with whom we can be open about our anxieties, worries, and the problems that throw us off balance. Someone we don't have to put on a good front for. Someone around whom we can be weak, vulnerable, and honest, and who will be the same around us. Thirdly, understanding. Someone who is interested in and can make sense of certain obscure features of our minds, our obsessions, preoccupations, and ways of seeing the world, and whom we are excited to understand in turn. If we have these three critical ingredients to hand, we will feel loved and essentially satisfied, whatever differences then crop up in 100 other areas. Perhaps our partner's friends or routines won't be a delight, but we will be content. Just as if we lack these emotional goods and yet agree on every detail of European literature, interior design, and social existence, we are still likely to feel lonely and bereft. By limiting what we expect a relationship to be about, we can overcome the tyranny and bad temper that bedevils so many lovers. A good, simpler, yet very fulfilling relationship could end up in a minimal state. We might not socialize much together. We might hardly ever encounter each other's families. Our finances might overlap only at a few points. We could be living in different places and only meet up twice a week. Conceivably, we might not even ask too many questions about each other's sex life. But when we would be together, it would be profoundly gratifying because we would be in the presence of someone who knew how to be kind, vulnerable, and understanding. A bond between two people can be very deep and important precisely because it's not played out across all practical details of existence. By simplifying and clarifying what a relationship is for, we release ourselves from overly complicated conflicts and can focus on our urgent underlying needs to be sympathized with, seen, and understood.
Deciding whether...
Man, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. I don't know about y'all, but I needed that. Not only for myself, but, for my partner. My wife and I, we've been together for 21 years, and it's a constant work. It's constant work to. I think I can hurry it. I can hurry it. There's a little bit of a background feed.
You can hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Background feed. You can hear us?
Yeah.
I can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay.
There's a little bit of a delay in a background feed if you want to turn your background down.
Okay.
Or your audio. Whatever you want to call it. I don't even know what to call it. So we just watched the video. Townsends about 3 requirements to a good relationship, and they believe the three requirements to a good relationship is kindness, shared vulnerability, and understanding. What are the odds of vulnerability being one of those important pieces? Sounds about
Yes,
right.
that does sound about right.
Yeah. So we left off at God being a centerpiece to your relationship. And for some of us, or some people out there, or us, we might struggle with seeing the importance of God being a part of relationship. And so from your experience, tell us the benefits of having God as part of your relationship.
Okay. Yeah, so I'd say the importance of having God in the middle of your relationship is because I was saying we live in a very turbulent world right now, and so there's a lot going on that causes people to not feel hope of anything. It can also lead to, as far as like a lot of turmoil in the relationship, because people feel that relationships don't work, and so by having God in the midst of the relationship and like taking on the values and the walk that he's calling us to allows us to better grow as individuals, allows us to have a hope for the future, but also allows us to see hope within one another, because it's sometimes hard for us, I guess, as people to see hope in the world and hope in each other or in any person. So being able to have him in our lives and understand that he's the God of hope, and so he gives us hope. He wants us to abound in hope, and so being able to have him as the centerpiece of hope in a world that looks like it's going to, chaos, allows us to have peace and to be able to come together with one another. I think, and I think that's huge. I think because you have to be able to have something that is a firm foundation in the midst of all the rocky turmoil and the storm that is the current world.
Yeah. Crystal, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think God has to be in relationships because he's the creator of relationships.
Oh, come on now.
You know what I'm saying? But what is a relationship without God? Is it at its best? Is it what it can be? How can it be? How can it live up to its potential if God is not in it when he's the creator of our relationship,
Right. Yeah. That's good, man. And if you kind of go back and the Adam and Eve story, it's like too, and I think somewhere in the Bible, I'm not real rehearsed on the Bible. I don't read it as much as I should, but I believe there's a part in there where like God felt like Adam needed a partner, so he took his rib, right? And so that's the highlighting of the essential piece to that other half. And what you're saying, I completely agree in, but I feel like in some relationships, we miss that important piece of how God is the glue to keeping that relationship together, to helping us, be aware of the lack of hope, helping us to be aware of our own selfishness. And God highlights a lot of those things, because as you come to God to find answers for your relationship and you're sensitive enough to the Spirit, you'll be able to see the selfishness and that you've provided or shared, or the lack of sharing. You'll see some of the outbursts. And so I think God is definitely a good mediator in a relationship. But I think in practical, in real life, even outside of relationships, we believe that we're doing things on our own. We might see promotions at work, or we might get praises to the work that you do, and that kind of removes God on its own individually. And so do you guys have any advice on how people can reconnect to the gifts and those glories that you get are directly from God, and how do we kind of tie that together to our relationship? Like, I know, Crystal, you said like God is the reason why you have the relationship, but individually speaking, on to our personal development part of it, how can we take ourselves from grabbing on to those praises and giving credit to God?
So I would say it's interesting. So I was listening to, I think there was a survey done where it was like, when people read their Bible on a more consistent daily basis, it leads to people feeling less stress, less depression, being able to not be full of anger, being able to connect in their relationships, and having a better, more fulfilled life, I think.
Mm.
So by getting in his word, just that daily devotion, I think is going to help as far as like that individual self growth, individual self. Because as you grow and get better, that allows you to more easily communicate and get better with your spouse, yeah, and in your relationship.
Exactly.
Because
Yeah.
if you're in a state where you're more inwardly damaged and you can't look outwardly, then you're not going to be able to connect with other people. Because first off, you're not working on fixing what's in you, and then you're projecting that on other people around you. So you're not going to allow yourself to be able to trust or build relationships with other people. And so by being in His Word, the devotion allows us to better reflect and like it mirrors back to ourselves the things within ourselves that's broken, and allows us to be able to start by the Spirit. He comes and helps to fix things and allows us to kind of walk more like Him, which will align us better to become the people that we're supposed to be, and then we're able to connect with other people and see the good in people, the light in people, the hope, or the to take the risk to trust people. So yeah,
Good, man. So let's go back a little bit. And like I mentioned in the opening, shout out to JP again. He referred me to you all's. He actually shared your live, and transparent with the Townsends. You guys get a chance, go into your search bar on Facebook and type, and on YouTube, and type in "transparent with the Townsends." They share great information that I think you can apply to your personal self and to your relationship. But they created this platform that I love. And, so let's go behind the scenes of that. Like what led you guys to doing that? Share your backstory to creating that Facebook live session, those Facebook live sessions.
Yeah.
Like, how did you guys
So
come up
we
with the
have a
topics and
YouTube
stuff too?
channel,
Yeah.
and- That's funny. We so we have a YouTube channel, and a friend of mine had watched all our videos on our channel, and she was just like, you guys should do Facebook Live. Just go live. And it terrified me. So I was like, I have to do it because I'm in this kind of phase in my life. Well, I don't want to say it's a phase. I want it to be all lifelong, where I have to do the things that make me afraid.
do it anyway.
Because I just have to prove that I can do the things with the fear. I can conquer my fear because God is here. So, that was really how we ended up doing the Facebook Live. It was kind of a challenge from someone, and we took it upon ourselves. And then we got really good feedback after the first one. So we decided to stay consistent and keep doing it. And it's definitely been a journey. I think when it comes to what we decide to talk about, it's literally sometimes something that has happened that day.
Yep.
And we're like, oh, let's talk about that. Yeah, let's talk about that. Sometimes it is more planned, but we do like to try to keep it very organic. Like one of our episodes was about how we went to my best friend's baby shower, and we won one of the little contests where we had to diaper a bear, and how we got some type of spiritual revelation out of us winning a diapering bear contest. And that was what the live was about. So it just really depends. The Holy Spirit just kind of leads us into whatever, and we just go with it.
Yep.
Yeah. That's good. What was y'all's last episode about? I haven't had a chance to get on and check it out. What did you guys talk about in your last one?
So the last episode, we actually talked about how we took a break for the week of Valentine's Day. We took a break just to, refocus on us and take a break away from, people.
Society.
Yeah.
So we could, we could make sure that our marriage was good and our union was good before we faced the world. And so that's what we talked about, how important it is to really step aside from, you know, everybody else every now and again, so you can be more
That's
intentional
good.
in your marriage.
Yeah.
Taking that time to, you know, set that time aside to really just reconnect, to cleave to one another,
Yeah.
to be able to really make sure that everything is where it needs to be. And sometimes it's just a rest period. It's just a
Rest.
matter of like just spending that time in, you know, rest with one another, and just being able to, I guess, get outside of the pressure for a second, so you can just be able to
Yeah.
sit in it.
I need to go back and
Because
watch
now
that.
that
That
we've
is
committed ourselves to doing the lives, you know, it is part of our routine, but it does take from our time together. So, you
right.
know, it was Valentine's Day, and we didn't have a chance to spend Valentine's Day together because we were both working. So we were like, you know what, we're just gonna take a break from this little live thing, and we're gonna spend time with each other because that
Yeah.
matters to us. So yeah, that's what our episode was about.
That's good. I need to go back and watch that because you, like I said, Western culture, man, this is in great part like the hustle culture,
Yep.
you know, and we're ambitious as Americans and
Yeah.
we're go getters. We get so focused on grinding at, you know, going after what we want, you know, whether it be like, you know, tangible things for ourselves or nowadays as influencers, we want to try to help other people. And it's so easy to put your own stuff on the back burner, your relationship, your own personal development. And yeah, that's good. I'm glad y'all shared that because I can definitely take that advice and use it. So let's come back to this relationship piece. And as I said in our preliminary call, Robert, my wife and we're she's white and we're biracial couple. And you know, no relationship's perfect. And so we might find, you know, find a time to where things really are out of control and you might need a therapist. Or you might need to take deeper and more time reflecting on yourself to see how you can do things better in your relationship. But when you go to focus in on how it's become out of control and you want to find a therapist or relationship advice, do you think that the relatability and the way the race of the person that's providing the advice matters?
Yeah, sure. I was gonna say yes and no, but I think you can answer better than I can because you've dealt with both
Yeah.
two different types of therapists before.
So I've been in therapy for, I don't know, how old am I? 34. I've been in therapy for almost 20 years. I've been in therapy since I was a teenager. And I've gone through quite a few therapists. And one of my probably most effective therapists was a white woman.
Mm.
And, you know, I don't believe she was a Christian. But she was very effective for me and for what I needed in that season.
Would you say she understood Black culture or no?
No, but I didn't need her to. I
Ooh,
just needed
okay.
her to give me the tools that I needed for the issue that I had. and that was what she did. She did a very good job at her job. She might, I mean, I wasn't there talking about, you know, how hard I was struggling as a Black teenager and this, that, and the other either. But if I was, maybe I probably would have pursued a Black therapist, but she did what I needed her to do. It didn't really matter her race or my race.
So just she had the tools, and as a professional, she stood in and just kind of do what you needed.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you just need a therapist who can help you to fix the issues you need to fix. That's really it. Someone who provides a safe place for you. Even
Yeah.
if you do need to bring up race and, you know, like you said, your wife is a different race than you. So, I mean,
I almost feel like
how would you, you know, what therapist would you find? Do you need to find
Right.
a Black therapist or do you need to find a white therapist? So that's,
I think it's preference. I think at the end of the day, like the problem isn't race. The problem is there's a core issue problem with dealing with anything, and so what you really need is just somebody to help you to figure out what the core issue and the problem is, so that way you can have the conversations and address it. Because part of the problem, I think, is that especially us as a community of people, like we don't communicate well, especially in the current times we're in now. Like everybody's on their phones for texting, but like people are drawing away from just having conversations. Period. And so if
Right.
if we're not communicating, then obviously, or we assume everybody assumes or knows exactly why I feel the way I feel, or they can just know what the issue is based off of like, oh, I've said it once before. Maybe they didn't understand the reasons behind why you said that. So it's like getting to the core issue of it and helping somebody like to use that scalpel to like just dig deep to figure out exactly what the core issue is. That way you can address it and fix that so you can build on the foundation that's repaired.
Yeah, that's good. For me, like being in a relationship for 22 years, 21 years, 22 years, in May, or it might be, it's been a long time. You want to be the best that you can for that person, especially if they've seen you go through a transformation, right? And they've got to deal with that transformation and that new you in the relationship. And so they're processing a whole different person. They're learning about a whole different person. Within that, is my own trauma. And so you said it greatly, Crystal, like going into finding a therapist, I don't need to go into it trying to figure out someone to help me heal my trauma, but we need to find someone that's going to help us provide tools on how to be a better couple and have a better marriage, whether that's a black or a white person. But there was a time to where we got into it feeling like we might need to have some mediation and a therapist. And she asked me, do you want to find someone black? And I entertained it, and I had some fears that I wouldn't get the fair evaluation, I guess is the word I'm looking for. But if you're going in it to get the tools to be a better husband or a better wife or to better have a better marriage, then the race is not going to matter.
Right.
If you're actively seeking to improve your relationship, the person, what they look like, is not going to matter. Man, that's good. I love that. That's good stuff. And to me, that kind of removes a barrier and motivates you to want to seek to make that happen instead of kind of pushing it off and waiting because you're not sure if you need a specific looking person to help you be a better spouse. So, man, that's good, man. I like that. Staying with relationships, my wife and I, we've been together for a minute, and even in life period though, like we get onto this judgment phase. Like, I don't know if it's a phase or it's just what we do, like as people. Like, we're judging situations and we're judging people.
Yeah.
Like, reflecting on whether it's normal for, like, do you think it's normal for partners to judge each other? And like, how, like, is there a limit, or is there like where do you kind of cut that off and just embrace the individual for what they are?
Well, that's a good question. I think you want to go first?
No, you can.
I think it's interesting because I think even when I said in the beginning of our relationship, like no judgment on everything, you said it like I think on time we had another conversation, like did he really believe what he was actually saying?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I actually did. I think I said it, and what I really wanted was transparent, honest conversations about stuff, and that's to be able to freely talk. But I think at the end of the day, sometimes there's still like a core part of us that's kind of like, why you say that? Or why did you do the things that you did? Like, why did you do that? And so I think at the end of the day, like I think this always going to kind of be there, just because like sometimes we're human, and we want to we have this thing like I think I'm right about stuff, and so if you do it this way, like that's wrong that you did it. But the thing is, I think it's like understanding that we're different people and that we think differently. I kind of come to understanding that we think differently.
Yeah.
Like I think very fast. And like you think differently about how you actually operate things, and we had that, like part of that came from therapy, where like she pointed out that we think differently, and I had to understand like the way we approach problems is different, and so like our viewpoints on it are like our perspective on how we would solve it is different. So we have to be more open and conversate on what's actually going on. Or if I have an issue with something, or if I think something is weird, I'll be like, I can openly just talk about like, I don't think that was actually the right thing to do, or I don't like that you did that. And so then you can tell me like how you thought about it, how you felt about it, and then we can be like, okay, cool. We can either agree to disagree, or we can come to an agreement on it and be okay with that, whichever way it is, and just kind of move forward. And I think that's, you have to be okay with that, I think, is the biggest thing. Like being open enough to talk about it, and then being open enough to accept whatever is,
Yeah.
and then grow from that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Did you want to piggyback?
to be honest, like I judge you all the
I
time.
know you do.
I judge you
Oh,
probably
man.
about 30 times a day. Like I'd be like,
Yeah.
why is he wearing that? Why did he make that decision? Why did he? What? That just doesn't make sense. But I think I can also judge and understand, but you need to still accept
You need you broke up.
that
You
he
broke up,
is
Krista.
making
What'd you
those
say?
choices or he's doing something
You
different.
broke up. You broke up, Krista. What'd you say?
That I can judge him, but I still need to be able to accept that he is going to do it that way. Or I may not have liked that decision he made, but you know what? I can accept it because he is my spouse and I love him and I married him. And I always want him to believe that I care about him and that I really do look at him with the best intentions and with the best mindset.
Evaluate from a place of love, and
Yeah.
not allow it to get to this position of bitterness or anger or spite.
Right.
Yeah.
Just because I judge doesn't mean I have to criticize.
Ooh.
Oh, come
I
on.
think there's a difference. Like I might judge you, but that doesn't mean I have to nag you because I don't agree that you did this. I just it's really a matter of disciplining yourself and watching your mouth sometimes.
Self-control,
Yeah.
self-discipline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's bars, man. I love that.
That's bars, man. I love that.
I get to sense sometimes like we get into judgment
sometimes, like,
as
we get
like a
into
measuring.
judgment as like a measuring.
And when you measure, I feel
And
like
when you measure,
sometimes
I feel
there's
like
a
sometimes
tendency
there's
to
a tendency
compare.
to compare.
Yeah.
And I think
And I
sometimes we
think
either
sometimes
compare
we
to our
either compare to our
expectations or to
to
someone you might
someone
have
you
like
might
this
have like
crush
this
on,
crush
or
on, or
like a
like
movie
a
that you've
movie that you've
seen. Like,
seen. Like,
well, I want him to
well, I
do it
want him
like
to do it
this,
like
or I
this,
want her to do it
or I
like
want her to
this,
do it like
or
this, or
I want her to smell
I want
like
her to
this.
smell
And
like this. And
instead of
instead
saying,
of
hey, that's
saying,
my
hey,
boo,
that's my boo,
he might have a
he
little
might have a
body
little
odor,
body
but
odor, but
I'm gonna
I'm
drop
gonna
some hints
drop some
to him,
hints to
or
him, or
he
he
might
might
dress this kind
dress
of
this kind of
way, and
way,
maybe I
and
can go
maybe I can go
find him a shirt I
find him
like
a
to
shirt I
see him
like to see
in,
him in,
Mm-hmm.
or tell him
or tell him
what I like to
what I
see him
like to
in.
see
And
him
so
in. And so
I'm not stuck now that you've God gave me that feedback and that thought. Like I'm not stuck
I'm not
on
stuck
it
now
just
that you've God
being
gave me
one
that
way.
feedback and that
It's
thought.
when
Like I'm not stuck
your
on it
spouse
just being
judges
one
you.
way. It's when your
It's
spouse
not
judges
they're
you.
comparing and they're not measuring
It's
you
not
because
they're
of their
comparing, they're not
expectation or
measuring you because of their
comparison, but
expectation or comparison. But
I think it's like you said, it's
I think
natural,
it's like you
right?
said, it's natural,
And
right?
where you become aware
Where
of
you
that
become
is
aware of that
healthy, and where
is
you
healthy, and
become
where you
accepting of
become
that is when
accepting
it's
of that is
healthy,
when
and
it's healthy, and
when you're not
when you're not
being
being
critical and
critical and
criticizing is when it's
criticizing is
healthy.
when
And
it's
so
healthy. And so
that's good
that's
stuff,
good
man.
stuff, man.
I'm gonna take that
I'm
and
gonna
run
take
with
that
that. I
and run
love
with
it.
that. I love it.
Um,
Um,
so we
So
just
we
discussed
just
healthy
discussed
ways to
healthy ways to
addressing
address
judgment
and
within
judgment within
relationships. That was
relationships.
going to be
That
my
was going
next
to be my
question,
next
but you guys
question, but you
rolled right
guys
into
rolled
it.
right into it.
Man, that was good.
Man,
I
that's
hope
good.
people that are
People
watching
that are
or
watching
watch
or
this
watch this
can take this
can take
and
this
apply it to
and
the
apply it to the
relationship.
relationship.
So there was
So there was a
episode you guys did a
episode
few
you
weeks
guys did a few
ago,
weeks ago,
integrating Jesus in
integrating
therapy.
Jesus.
Tell us a little bit about what kind of led y'all into that, and what I didn't get to
Tell us a
finish
little
it,
bit
but
about
in
what kind of
brief
led y'all into
detail,
that.
like
I didn't get to finish it,
explore
but
that
in brief
concept of
detail,
integrating
like
Jesus in therapy
explore that
and one
concept of
spiritual journey.
integrating
I think we
Jesus in
touched on it a
therapy
little bit
and one
about
spiritual journey.
God being the
We touched on it a little
centerpiece,
bit
but
about God being the centerpiece,
and we
but
talked a little bit about
and
therapy.
we talked
But
a little bit about
let's
therapy.
talk
But
about
let's
integrating
talk
that
about integrating that
God in
God
therapy.
in therapy.
Yeah. I think it. Well, why did we actually come up with that topic? I'm trying to remember exactly.
I think I had a really good therapy session that day, and I was just so grateful for my therapist because so I do have a therapist, and she's a Black woman, she's a Christian, and I know that God put her in my life for this particular season. You know what I mean? And I think I had talked with her actually about the stigma of mental health and therapy in the Black community. And I think that was why we ended up talking about it. Yeah.
So I think I think the biggest thing as far as like why we talked about it and when we move forward and then integrating it with Jesus was that we were talking about as far as like the black community doesn't as a whole doesn't really accept mental health as an issue, and they don't really look at therapy as something that people need to go through, or have to help them to better themselves. And then as far as like how at the end of the day, like Jesus is all about, he's the wonderful counselor, and so he asks everybody to come to him, all who are laboring or heavy laden, and he will give us rest. So he wants us to have rest in our mind, rest in our heart, rest in the way that we go about things. And so in the way that he teaches, in the way he goes about things, he's all about bringing deliverance and healing, and speaking to people, to their hearts, to be able to help them to grow. So he was therapeutic throughout his whole ministry. And so in that process, he's still doing that through the Holy Spirit today. And so it's kind of one of those things, like if we kind of reject the practicality of like therapy in our mental health, I think we'll also kind of slightly reject the therapeutic aspects of what Jesus is trying to do through the Holy Spirit with us, because we will bury that burdens or the pains or the trauma that we had in our past inside of us, instead of like facing it, accepting it, openly talking about it through our testimonies and overcoming that we go through, and allowing the release of that to allow us to have healing, which we got that through actually opening up through our journey of infertility. That's how we got healing, by opening up about it and talking about it and actually sharing that story in our testimony and our journey through that. And so the Holy Spirit worked out that therapeutic aspect through that. And so it's that opening up aspect of the therapy that allows us to kind of be free, and the Holy Spirit work through that. And so if we don't accept, therapy, then we'll reject what Jesus is doing from a therapeutic aspect to help us to be free of our trauma and our pains.
Yeah. I also think that there's this stigma, and I think we talked about it that day on the live, is that you don't tell certain things. Like, you don't go out telling all your business, or you keep it in the family, right?
Right.
But when you look at the standpoint of the Bible and how we're supposed to function as a family of believers, we're supposed to bear each other's burdens and confess our sins to one another, so that we can be there for each other and be a safe place and a support system for each other. Because we are supposed to be the ones who hold each other up. And I think when you really think about what it means, if you tell someone, oh, keep it in the family, or don't tell anybody about it, it's adding shame to them. It's secrecy now, which makes it this bad, disgusting thing. And that's how Satan functions. Like, Satan wants us living in shame. Satan wants us hiding our little dirty secrets.
I think one thing I think I've said in the video, in a past video like way ago, was that if whatever is hidden in the dark, the enemy will use to accuse and attack you. Whatever is open and out there and you've accepted, he can't use as a weapon against you, right? Because you've already taken ownership of it. Whatever you don't take ownership of will be used to continue to hurt your soul, or to continue to attack you. Because you'll live in fear and shame about your whole life, because you'll be afraid eventually someone's going to learn your secret. Versus, like, if it's open, I've accepted it, I've gone through, I've gotten healing from it, it is what it is, I've accepted the past as the past, I'm no longer that person anymore, then, you're free from it.
Yeah.
And Satan doesn't want us to be free.
Right. That's the shackles. Yeah, and listen, that is a perfect segue into vulnerability and embracing vulnerability. So I'm gonna play this video we got queued up, and then we'll talk about it on the other side. Let me get the screen shared. I'm gonna stop my cam. I ran to the bathroom while this is playing. I watched it once, so. Can y'all see it okay?
It's loaded.
It's coming. Yep, there it is.
Okay. Here we go.
There are aspects to all of us that, if they were exposed to a harsh or unsympathetic critic, would result in severe humiliation and mockery.
It's not for me.
From close up, we are none of us reliably impressive. We get agitated, fretful, cantankerous and panicky. Under the pressure of events, we shout, slam doors and let out screams or wails. We have episodes of absurd clumsiness. We bump into doors, trip and drop things down our front. We're worried pretty much all the time about how others see us, about where our careers are going, and about everything important that we've forgotten to do in our lives. We long for love, but are unthinking and insensitive around those close to us. We are gauche in our efforts to seduce and pitiful in our requests for attention. Our bodies have a range of shameful habits and vulnerabilities. We are, from certain angles, truly embarrassing propositions. All this we struggle to hide. The inner idiot is carefully monitored and ruthlessly gagged. We have learned from our earliest years that the only priority around vulnerability is to disguise it completely. We strive remorselessly to look composed, to erase the evidence of our silliness, and to try to appear a great deal more normal than we know we are. We are understandably very focused on the downsides of vulnerability. What is far less well recognized is vulnerability's occasional, very significant and profound upsides. There are moments when the revelation of weakness, far from being a catastrophe, is the only possible route to connection and respect. At points, we may dare to explain with rare frankness that we are afraid, that we are sometimes bad, and that we have done many silly things. And rather than appalling our companions, these revelations may serve to endear us to them, humanizing us in their eyes, and letting them feel that their own vulnerabilities have echoes in the lives of others. Together, we realize that the definition of what is normal has missed out on key aspects of our mutual reality. In other words, vulnerability can be a bedrock of friendship. Friendship properly understood not just or primarily as a process of admiration, but as an exchange of sympathy and consolation for the troublesome business of being alive. There can, of course, be unfortunate ways of handling vulnerability, when we do so in the form of an aggressive demand that others rescue us, or when our frailties lack boundaries, or when we're close to rage and hysteria rather than melancholy or grief. Good vulnerability doesn't expect another person to solve all our difficulties. We let them see a tricky part of who we are, simply in the hope that they will be emboldened to feel more at ease with their own less dignified sides. Good vulnerability is fundamentally generous. It takes the first step of disclosure so as to render it safe for others to unburden themselves and disclose something of their hidden selves in turn. It's a gift in the form of a risk taken for somebody else. Furthermore, displays of vulnerability have a curious way of signaling that we are, despite the embarrassing avowals, far from fundamentally ridiculous or pitiful. We are rather strong enough to be weak, to let our silliness, our idiocy, our anger, and our sadness show, confident that these do not have to be the final verdicts on who we are. We proceed with a bold sense that despite the lack of surface evidence, everyone is in the end as wounded, aggrieved, worried, and damaged as we are, and that we're not therefore, through our disclosures, casting ourselves out of the clan for good. We are simply reconfirming our essential membership of the human race. It's something of a minor tragedy that we should spend so much of our lives striving to hide our weakness, when it is in fact only upon the dignified sharing of vulnerability that true friendship and love.
I tell you what, that little munchkin devil be in the way. Boy, I tell you
Boy, I
what,
tell you
everything
what,
froze up out of
everything
the blue.
froze up out of the blue.
But
But
can y'all hear me okay?
can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hear us?
That was
Still
good.
hear
That was
us?
good.
Yeah, I can hear you
Yeah,
guys.
yeah, I can hear you guys.
Okay.
I think that spoke
I think
right
that spoke
to
right to
what you were
what
saying.
you were saying.
Both of you guys were
Both of you
saying,
guys were
like, you know, the
saying,
devil
like, the
attaches
devil
itself to
attaches
like
itself
those
to like those
embarrassments and
embarrassments and
that
that
shame,
shame,
and it keeps us
and it
from
keeps us from
connecting with
connecting with
other people,
other people,
our friends, our
our friends, our
peers, and
peers, and
our spouses, our
spouses, our
girlfriends,
girlfriends,
boyfriends.
boyfriends.
Um,
Um,
again, I
Again,
found you.
I found you.
I
I
fell in love with you
fell in love with
guys
you
the first
guys.
video I
The
seen,
first
and y'all
video
were
I
talking
seen,
about
and y'all were talking
vulnerability.
about
So
vulnerability. So
let's go back to that video.
let's go back
What led y'all into kind of
to
going
that
into
video.
talking about vulnerability in the first
What
place?
led y'all into
And
kind
let's
of
speak
going
from
into
it,
talking about
since
vulnerability
we
in
were
the
on the
first place?
topic of
And let's speak from
the
it
Black community
since
and
we were on the
our
topic of
reluctance
the
to
Black community and
see
our
mental health therapy
reluctance
as
to see mental health therapy as
added value. But
added
let's talk
value.
about
But
vulnerability
let's talk
too
about vulnerability too
from the Black
from the
perspective.
Black
You and mine.
perspective.
Yeah. I think we talked in that video about the Black community, and as far as like there's no, I won't say there's no
Being Black and being vulnerable.
yeah, it's hard for people to see being Black and being vulnerable, and how it's one of those things where it's like we have this continued thing where like you better not cry as a man, especially like Black men. You're supposed to be this, hard rock. You can
Right.
never see no tears. You're supposed to be thugging, all that stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so it's that stereotypical media perspective or media portrayal
Right.
that has been especially in movies and stories and all that stuff like that, and people kind of took it to heart and accepted it, especially like what music kind of puts in people's hearts about that too as well, and running with it, and not seeing the value in vulnerability, because as I said in the video, like if I can't open and share anything about myself with you because I'm just this rock that has like this hard surfaces, like how can you relate to me? Like if we don't have anything that we can connect on, or if I can't see that you're not perfect like I'm not perfect.
Right.
And so you have that aspect of things, and then also I think one of the things I think that kind of calls out to me from the Bible too is that God works with plenty of imperfect people who have vulnerabilities, who have flaws, and they're very open about their vulnerabilities or flaws. And the authors who wrote based off the inspiration of the Holy Spirit allows us to kind of see and connect with those people as well, because their vulnerabilities are shown to us for all time. So you have that aspect of things, and then I think I closed out that video talking about how Jesus, for throughout his life was vulnerable, but also through his crucifixion was vulnerable, and then in his resurrection, he didn't resurrect without any of those blemishes. He resurrected with the nail prints in his hand and his feet and the marks. So he's going to bear that for all eternity, as a show of open vulnerability to us for all time. So I think that's pretty huge as far as an example.
Yeah. That was deep too. Crystal, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I just think, I mean, our whole, just to go back, I guess, to give a little backstory about how we even got here in the first place was because we started talking about our infertility story. And it was a very, very vulnerable place for us to, especially being Black and having that testimony and that story, and really having heard it from nobody else in my family or in my community. We were being extremely vulnerable in sharing that story, but it was literally because the Holy Spirit told us this was our way to healing, and we needed to share this story so that we could heal. But in the process of us being vulnerable and sharing one of our kind of darkest secrets that we kept for a really long time, I think we also were able to witness other people see us be vulnerable and then start to share their own stories and secrets and things like that.
That was huge.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, like the video we watched, I think being vulnerable is just so important, particularly in our community where we don't do it enough.
Yep.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
and I think in that live that we did, I think I was talking about how with me and my girlfriends, who are most of them are black, like I don't think I can recall a time when I've seen most of them cry,
Mm,
because we just don't, like, we have this strong black girl syndrome
yeah.
where we don't cry that much, you know. If something's bothering me, I might not, like, I might complain or something, or I might just keep it close to the vest instead of crying and allowing myself to be sad, you know. So yeah, I think vulnerability is so important because it does allow us to just be us
Yeah.
Right.
and to feel like we can be safe being us, because we're all going through something.
That's
And we
right.
need more of that as black people. We need to shed this exterior, this tough,
Right.
tough exterior, so that we can just be us.
I think it's
Yeah.
important that we are vulnerable for a couple of different viewpoints. Like, first off, when I'm vulnerable, when we were vulnerable, it gave other people the boldness to be vulnerable and feel safe to be vulnerable. But I think so it allowed us to grow closer to other people that we may not have been as close with before, which I think is a big, huge thing. But also, like, if we can be vulnerable as a community, it will allow us to be brought closer together. It'll allow the foundation of safety within our community with one another, and it'll allow us to have a strong foundation to grow and develop. Because that is, if I have, if you know I can, if you know I'm being open and honest with you about the stuff that I struggle with, then you can trust me with the stuff that you struggle with. And then that way we can really work on growing and developing together and building something together. Like, if I
Right.
don't know if I can ever trust you, then we're not going to build anything together, because
That's
what's going
right.
to happen is we're going to keep trying to one up one another
Mm-hmm.
and sabotage one another.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah, that's good,
Yeah,
man.
that's good, man.
Listen, man, embracing vulnerability is, to me, the
the
essential piece to personal development and a healthy relationship with a partner.
Yes.
Because like you said, like, we not perfect, you know what I mean? And the more that we kind of hide those imperfections of ourselves, the more, uh, I guess that we subconsciously and unconsciously are accepting that we're not willing to accept the imperfections of our partner.
Yep.
You know, and so, well, hey, I might be hiding this. Sometimes a thought come in our minds that their partner might be hiding something too, and you know, it might be sparked because of how they might be acting that day, or something you might have said if there was an argument that never really been addressed. So this vulnerability, this unwillingness to embrace it, just adds up into, and it embraces into, or excuse me, it spills over into other avenues of the relationship. But being vulnerable and embracing vulnerability is so powerful. It requires you to be weak, though. Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
We to get
Yeah.
strong.
Yeah.
I think the flip side of that too is if I never show vulnerability and I always show myself as this perfect example of things, and it's gonna always make her uncomfortable in her flaws. Because inwardly she knows she has flaws, but if all she ever sees is perfection from me,
Right.
then it makes a
hiding it.
dichotomy where we can't ever connect.
That's
Because
right.
I'm at this place up here and you're down here in your flaws, and you're like, well, he's perfect. I don't know if I can ever match up or connect with that. And so it'll fracture the relationship because there's no connection on the vulnerable flaws.
That's right.
So vulnerability is needed so that way you won't be unbalanced.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It holds that harmony in place. And you know, once I think about it, and after watching that video, like, I think we're inherently vulnerable people anyway, and I think that's what brings up this facade of I'm perfect, you know, because you might be ashamed of this blemish that you have, or you might be ashamed of this mistake that you had made. When deep down, embracing those things is where the fun happens, and you acknowledge your humanity. But in regards to the Black community, though, we've been trained to, and I'm gonna code switch real quick, but a lot of to not let a nigga pull your card. Right? You there's this feeling that if, and I'm gonna code switch again, if a nigga know how you feel, or if a nigga think you soft, that a nigga gonna try you. You know what I mean? And so you don't want to be tried. And then when you get into those crowds where you're getting roasted, you know what I mean? You tell the homie some information, and y'all get around some people and get to acting a fool, and then you get roasted off that sensitive information. And so now you like, I'm not, why am I going, you know what I mean, tell you this or tell anybody else anything? And then you got mama, you know, dealing with trauma. Don't you go tell my business, you know what I mean? And don't tell granny and them what's happening over here. And so we not allowed to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I think I heard it best from this video. I think there was this lady. She was saying that if I'm strong, like I will never get help. Like you don't give, like strong people don't, like strength doesn't accept weakness or isn't offered, you know, help. So like it's when you're in a sense of a position of weakness, a position where you need help, where people are like, okay, cool, let me help you out and lift you up. Like if you're at this high position of like I'm super strong, then I'm like, oh, okay, I'm not gonna help them. They good. Like I don't need to actually help show them up. So like allowing people to see your vulnerability and your weakness allows people to join hands and, you know, be able to lift each other up or encourage or help us to stand together. Versus like being an island of perceived strength.
Yeah. It's a stigma that I feel like is slowly but surely kind of being addressed, as far as you know, seeing it for what it is and its benefits to embracing vulnerability. But vulnerability to me gets in the way, or the lack of embracing that vulnerability gets into the way of fostering hope. So let's go to hope real quick, because I think, and I'm gonna ask you guys a question, and we'll get into it. But do you think American communities have lost hope in their communities, in the government? Like, do you feel like there's a large, I guess, reduction or hopelessness in our society?
I would say so. I mentioned it a little bit earlier in our podcast today. I think, you know, and it stems from, I think, from the fact that people don't trust themselves or have hope in themselves. So you don't have hope for your own personal future. You don't also trust people in general around you, because you don't connect with people or trust people. So in the establishment of government and any other, you know, business entity is people running it. So if you don't trust people, then you don't trust any of those establishments. Right. Which leads to people just doing whatever they want to do, which leads to a whole bunch of chaos. So I think the course issue is we got to address how we feel about ourselves, what we think about ourselves, and how we connect and how we feel about other people. And I draw that back to, you know, the Holy Spirit and Jesus being the center and God being the center of our lives and our heart. Because he brings us hope. Like we have, you know, a lot of people who believe different, you know, particular religions that have like either an end where it's like there's nothingness, or, you know, other particular ends that have like no hope behind it, where it leads to, as far as like, well, if that is the point, then what purpose is there for life itself?
Exactly.
So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, so God gives us the hope of eternity and joy and peace and healing with him. And so being able to understand, as far as like, so the whole story of the Bible is like redemption. It's like there's a perfect world, man sinned and fell. We have this fallen world we have now, where this gets disconnect and distrust and chaos. And then Jesus comes to bring us a living hope through his death, burial, and resurrection on the cross, and allowing us to be able to be reconnected with him and allow him to fill our hearts, so that way we can learn how to love ourselves, we can learn how to love other people, and we can learn how to love him. We can build communities of love, service, and generosity within one another, which will build a community of hope. Because we can trust and hope in one another, because like, okay, if I have a need, then I know of a community that will help me. If I have somebody, if I need prayer for something, I know there'll be a community that will, you know, pray and be there for me. If, you know, what can we do to grow together? I have people I can trust and rely on to help me. And then also we have the hope of eternity, in peace after the chaos that is currently in the state that we're in now. So you have the hope for eternity, and you have the hope for the present, for the community and the love that surrounds you. So I think that's important, um, especially in the position where people look at now as all that there is, where there's just a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good. You said people look at now like that's all there is. Man, did you have anything you want to add to that, Crystal?
I don't know. I try not to stay into politics and the news that much, and I think he laughs at me because I don't ever know what's going on.
Yeah.
So that's my fault. But I don't think people trust the government anymore because I
Yeah.
think there's a lack of vulnerability. I think you don't know what to believe anymore because we don't know who's being honest.
That's right.
So unfortunately, that is unfortunate. But like
Yeah.
my hope is in the Lord.
That's right. And I
I'm
think
probably one of those people too who can't feel like I can't trust the government either. So that's why I say my hope is in the Lord.
Yeah. I agree with you guys on that too, man. I've lost all hope, well, most hope in especially federal government. I do have a little bit of hope for our local government here in Oklahoma. But as far as my personal life and my community, I feel like our community at large has been beaten down to almost a hopeless community. I work with kids and families in underserved communities, and I see it on a daily where some of our Black children are hopeless. Parents are, hopeless. And I want to say a lot of that has to do with their vulnerability, the unwillingness to embrace vulnerability. We work with, connecting families with resources and services. And when teachers or education professionals feel like there's a need that the family has, we'll reach out to the family member and they'll be like, no, we don't need that. You know what I mean? And so there's that vulnerability, then unwillingness to embrace that vulnerability, to allow support in so that kid can come to school with as many barriers removed as possible, and so that some of those poor kids with their families and their lack of embrace that vulnerability, they have like nights of hunger, and they come to school hungry. They don't have their basic needs. And so for a great part, with it being an economic, I guess, disadvantage that we see in the Black community, you can only almost expect it's going to breed hopelessness, because it's hard for a lot of our families to have those basic needs because of our economic disadvantage historically. But being vulnerable is essential to allowing hope in, man. That's just my opinion. And to me, it rolls over into relationships with your spouse and your girlfriend or boyfriend, and even your peers. You know what I mean? And so, and when you get around your peers and you around a bunch of hopeless peers, you're gonna do some dumb shit. You know what I mean? Like, you're gonna get desperate.
Yeah. I think one of the biggest things there is, like, the biggest enemy, I think, to hope and vulnerability, and a lot of what we're talking about today is pride. Because you were talking about, like, if you're prideful, then you're not going to be vulnerable. If you're prideful, then you're not going to see any need to have hope because you think you know and you think you're where you need to be. So what do I need to hope for? Like, so pride, and pride will keep us from connecting with other people.
That's right.
We're superior. Right. So yeah, pride is that big enemy right there. So you got to take down that pride before pride leads to a fall. So
That's right. Man, that's good stuff. So we're up over an hour and 10 minutes. Before we close, I want to work up to this last question. We left a few out there, so if you guys wouldn't mind considering maybe in late May into June, we can come back for part 2.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, and then at that period, hopefully my wife, she'll be available, and we can do that as a couple, and we can dive into some relationship topics and then bring God into that. And, so let's plan for late May, early June for that. But with that being said, I want to know what you guys' thought. Like this theme of the theme of this year's, or excuse me, um, this season's theme was a season of transformation. I truly believe that we're in a period when the world around us is transforming, and it's kind of forced us out of our inertia of and moved us into thinking a little bit different. I think COVID has done that, and then the lockdown's done that. We've been stuck in the sameness, and I think COVID's forced us to change. And some of us that have reluctant to change have dealt with suicide ideation, loneliness, but I think it's a good moment to embrace transformation. And if we spend time working on ourselves and seeing this as an opportunity to transform our thinking and our living situation, that it'd be beneficial. But with that said, like when you hear the word transformation, and we'll start with you, Crystal. What comes to mind?
That's so funny. You should ask me first. I feel like this last season of my life has been a total transformation.
Come on.
Yeah, like the first word I think of when I think of transformation, honestly, is work. Work.
Okay.
Because you really do have to work to change.
That's right.
And when I say work, I mean putting in the effort, being intentional, being mindful of what you're putting into your mind, because change starts here and it starts in the heart. You have to want to change, and then you really have to work on this up here to change. I think what's the scripture about being renewed in your mind? We are being renewed in the spirit of our mind, and you have to constantly be renewing your mind. I think that's where major transformation takes place. And once you start to change here and you put in the work to change here, you will start to see different things in your life change, because your actions are going to change.
That's right.
Your character starts to change. So
yeah,
that's
good.
what transformation means to me. It's work.
Yeah, that's good. What about you, Robert?
The first word that came to my mind was change. I think you got to accept the change. I think transformation is a part of life. I think there's no such thing as being stagnant or remaining the same. Like there's no level ground in life. Like as we continue to grow, you will always change and transform.
That's right.
Like,
yeah.
How I looked 10 years ago is not how I look today. How I acted 10 years ago is not how I act today. So my current state of things, I was single then, I'm married now. Like there's a constant change in life and transformation. And so part of that is a matter of accepting the change. Obviously you can reject it, in which case you will not transform, and you will steadily be forced to go through a change that will be painful. But I think if you accept the change, it can become a true transformation that will allow you to really become who you're supposed to become, and to grow as a person, to grow in life, to grow spiritually, to grow with God, to grow in relationship and marriage, and to grow to become who you're destined to be.
Come on.
And so if you do accept the change, like there's still gonna be pain in the process, because that's just part of how it is. It's like, I think I like to equate that to like farming. Like when you plant a seed, like the seed is gonna go into the ground, and then as it actually is going through the process of growing, like the actual outer casing has to break, and so then it has to actually go through the pain of changing and going through that, and then actually growing through the soil, and with the pain of actually reaching through that, and then the winds and the storms that come, and have to actually continue to dig its roots. Or the butterfly, where the caterpillar has to actually cocoon itself and deal with the pain of that, and actually the growth of actually trying to break through the actual cocoon to transform into the butterfly itself. If it does not accept the pain and the change it has to go through, it will die in the cocoon. And so we have to be willing to accept the change, no matter how painful, no matter how it is. If you just really accept it and you go through that valley, God will bring you to the mountaintop and the pastures. So I think accepting every part of the process of life itself will allow you to continue to transform and continue to grow.
Mm. Come on, bars. I love it.
Oh, bars. I love it.
I'll even go as far as to add,
I'll even go as far as
awareness.
to add, awareness.
I think of
I think
transformation, it brings about an awareness, a heightened level of awareness to that lack of embracing vulnerability, right, and to that lack of hope that we've had up to that period of self-realization, and that's moving you into transformation. And so I think a lot of us, a lot of people in the world have been floating around on autopilot and allowing their thoughts to control their actions versus their awareness to control their thoughts, and in return they can control them. Yeah, and I've been guilty of that, and to me, whenever I came into being sober, that was one evolution and revelation that I had, was like, man, my thinking has been controlling me, and my lack of awareness to my thoughts has led me to be compulsive, in my actions, and develop these terrible habits, and during, the onset of that transformation, a level of awareness just heightened, and I'm like, wow, okay, I see why I did that, and I understand why I did that, and so transformation is a beautiful thing. I think it's natural, and I think for a good part we spoke on that throughout this whole top of this conversation. Where can the people find you? How often will you guys go live with Transparent with the Townsends?
So we go live every Thursday, so every week, and then that's on our Facebook channel, and then on YouTube, we're trying to get to consistent where we do we repost the Facebook lives on every week, but we also trying to have like a series video that goes up every week too. So we're trying to get consistent with that. So yeah, those would be the two places where you can find us.
Beautiful. Do you guys have an email for people to contact you if they'd like to be a guest or to add to the conversation?
Yeah, transparentwiththetownsends@gmail.com.
Beautiful. Man. Robert, Crystal, I appreciate you guys, man. This has been great. I can't wait to go back in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to upload this to Spotify, Apple, iHeart, but I can't wait to go back in there and listen to this again, because there's a bunch of gems throughout it. And so to the listeners, I hope you guys were able to get something from it. You know where to find the Townsends. Check in on them every Thursday. I know I will be over there. They've got a plethora of information and knowledge to share with the world. And so Robert and Crystal, I appreciate you guys, man.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, God bless you guys.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll see y'all soon.
Yeah, keep up the good work. We
Thank
like what you're doing.
Appreciate it, Crystal.
Later.
Later.
Bye.
Man, that was good stuff, y'all. Shout out to Robert and Crystal again. I really enjoyed every minute of that. There's a lot to take away from it. Let me go back real quick before I kind of debrief and summarize, and just kind of share what to expect moving forward from the next episode. Shout out to ISUPK. Yesterday, the brothers from ISUPK, we talked about sunsetting Black History Month. And today I had the pleasure of chilling with Robert and Crystal, and we talked about personal development and relationships. Again, big shout out to you, Robert and Crystal. I found them on Facebook through a mutual friend of ours, JP. JP, shout out to you, big dog. He shared their live stream, and they were talking about vulnerability. And I was currently in that mindset and that the state of mind of, evaluating how far I've come because I've allowed myself to be vulnerable. And I was thinking before I saw that video, how do I break down a message about vulnerability and share it to, social media, and, on my podcast. But, God has a way of highlighting people in your life, that will speak to, your thinking. And, thank God, for sending, the Townsends. Transparent with the Townsends is their, Facebook page. But, thank God for using them to kind of highlight, areas of vulnerability that I wasn't even thinking about, and I think it's essential to, one's transformation and one's growth. It could serve as a barrier, people think, being strong is the only way. And honestly, let's talk about that real quick, because being strong is being weak when you need to be weak. So, we have the alpha male and we have the alpha this and we have the alpha that, but how alpha are you if you can't allow yourself to be weak and vulnerable? I think vulnerability and embracing vulnerability is so weird. And I think being strong on its essence is so weird, because being strong is allowing yourself to be weak, allowing yourself to ignore those things that are out of your control, or to take things and be more rational about them. I think that's the word I'm looking for. Or less rational and more thoughtful. And being slow to react. Like, those are hard, weak, and simple things, if that makes any sense. I always like to think about, I guess, I don't know if I heard it from Jesus, but if a man slaps you, don't slap him back, or just being able to withstand doing what society has been labeled to be normal, a normal reaction, versus the unnormal thing is to not react. The unnormal thing is to do the weak thing. The normal thing is to what people call to do the strong thing. So in many cases, people were like, man, if a nigga hit you, hit him back, but in vulnerability, that's the weak thing to do, is to hit back. And the strong thing to do is to not hit back. And so it's such a strange phenomenon vulnerability is, and we miss it and run over it because we want to uphold this image. We're weak in the sense to not embrace our flaws. We're weak in the sense to not embrace our imperfections. And we're weak in the sense of creating this false sense of self and persona. I've been guilty of it. We're all guilty of it, and I think at any period in your life where you're looking to, change areas, like, for me, I need to change in my financing. For me, I need to change in being more accepting to, my wife's feelings and concerns and what she may be going through. There's a lot of changes that I will always be striving to make in my life. But there's vulnerability that I need to embrace within all that. And I think we're all guilty of it. And I think it gets in the way of really us making improvements in our life. I need to be vulnerable and acknowledging the fact that I'm shitty with my finances and spending. I need to be vulnerable and realizing that I'm actually broke and drowning in debt. And me being vulnerable and telling the world that, well, I feel like it's going to drive me to being more fundamentally responsible with my financing, to be more fundamentally with eliminating my debt. But it takes me to be vulnerable and embracing the vulnerability and that reality and that truth. And really, if we look at vulnerability, it's embracing truth, right? Like, it's the self-meeting truth. It's the self-meeting the ego. It's the self seeing the tail or the flesh for what it's been doing. Has been playing a trick on our thinking. And our thinking says that, within the ego says, hey, they don't need to know this part about me. Just keep it moving. They don't know, but the self embracing, the ego embracing that vulnerability is the ego embracing the self and allowing the self to lead into saying, hey, you got issues in this area, and it's okay to be open about it. Because then there comes in that connection. You have better connections with people that might be going through the similar issues. You might be able to inspire them and influence them to doing things that will yield them better results. And you have better connection with your spouse, and you have better connection with your family. In my case, better connection with my family and correcting my finances and eliminating debt will be like, we can go travel and do things and connect with my family. But that's just an example from, how I'm thinking about it. I'm not a know-it-all. I don't have a psychology degree or anything. But experience and whatever little bit of wisdom that God's blessed me with tells me that embracing vulnerability only yields positive results. Embracing vulnerability only fuels one's transformation, and it takes a lot of work. And to the point of hope and hopelessness, I think that the world can use more hope. We can never have enough. We can never not have enough hope. And in a time where we've got war in different continents and so much uncertainty on the financial and economic aspect of our lives, it's hard to put hope in the people that are in control of our day-to-day living. I mean, let's just call it for what it is. And that will spill over into, the hopelessness that we have in our peers. I think we put hope in, our car, that it's going to make it. I think, we're exercising hope and faith on so many levels unconsciously. But becoming conscious of the hope will show and shine a light of how much hopelessness that we actually have. And I think that a lot of people in the community that I'm associated with, my group, default in community is the African American community. I see a lot of hopelessness. And I want to say that vulnerability is that wall and barrier to seeing more hope. And so I'm hopeful that, we'll become more aware of the vulnerability and the power in embracing vulnerability, and that it will become less of a stigma and something more that we'll embrace as a community. Because there's reason to believe, there's reason to be more hopeful of the direction that we're in, especially here in the African American community in Oklahoma City. So shout out to the Townsends again, man. We got deep into it. Excuse us for the technical difficulties in that first part of our discussion. That was weird. I don't know how that happened, but the devil is a lie. We were talking about God and it's, God's role and the importance of God being the centerpiece of a relationship. And next thing you know, we're having technical difficulties. But that little devil, man, he higher-headed youngster. But we got through that, man. And man, they dropped some gems. So if you come to the tail end of this, thank you for listening. If you're coming to it for the first time, definitely take what you can from it, because I think they did a good job at discussing their perspective and their vision and their knowledge and experience on these topics of relationships and personal development. Stay tuned. I've got more good conversations coming up. If you want to come up and do a live, let me know, man. You can hit me up at Visionary Radio Podcast page on Facebook. I'm streaming live on YouTube. I'm not going to be doing too much more live here on Facebook. And we're going to try to move everything over to YouTube here shortly. So look for that. And then here in the near future, I'll be posting the lives that I did here on Facebook onto Spotify and Apple and wherever you get your podcasts. They'll be streaming on all podcast platforms. And, just to go back and I want to reiterate, the whole premise of VRP. I think we're in a period now where it's time to shift the culture and shift away into a new wave of thinking. And so my primary goal is to, talk a lot about, talk about the future and dive deep into certain topics and what I consider is, putting vision on certain topics, getting as deep as we can. I think that is a good start to, evolving into a new way of thinking. I can't teach anyone how to what to think, but we can promote different ways of thinking. So that's the overall premise of VRP is, paint a picture for your own individual future, being in control of that. And then also, driving hope and driving a new way of thinking. So I think I already said that. But I appreciate you guys for sticking around if you did for this long. If you're going back to replay this, I appreciate you for replaying it. Again, if you'd like to be a guest at any point to talk about whatever, you can hit me up, DM me on Facebook at Visionary Radio Podcast. With that being said, I love you guys. Don't forget, everyone has vision. The question is, who are you? What are you looking for? I'm out.